Wow, that was beautiful. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to be here with all of you in this beautiful space. We gather here for many events and goings-on in our journey to be an open, accepting, tolerant congregation who honors the inherent worth and dignity of all who enter here and those we have yet to meet. We remember the Tonga people whose land was built we remember the Tonga people whose land we've built our community upon. We honor children with care that begins before our Sunday service and religious education for those who stay for a bit until our time for all ages. We honor you with activities we hope you can't resist, such as lunch on the patio, which is on us if you are a first-time visitor. Also, let's see. Announcements. So, if you have an announcement you'd like us to hear, you can let Gabby know in the office by talking with her, emailing her, any other form of communication that works, so that we can make sure to share them. So first of all, there's an informal gathering in remembrance of Marion Monte on January 25th at 2 p.m. here in the church. There's ballots on the patio after the service. Please make sure you fill out your ballot. Social Justice Committee meets on the first Sunday of every month, so that's 2 Sundays from now. Save the date. The Black and White concert's coming up on February 24th, so save the date. Okay, wrong date. It's February 11th. All right, and now we're going to do the chalice lighting, and I have some help this morning. Do you have something for me?
Can I just announce this? Oh, okay. Also, in the bulletin is the Sunshine Committee questionnaire, and basically we're going to have a meeting next week to train people who are interested in being part of the pastoral care, which is a subset of the Sunshine Committee, but we're just gauging your interest in the different areas of helping one another. Thank you.
Now I have some help with the chalice lighting. Would Alex come on up now? Thank you.
The flame of our chalice this morning is a symbol of the warmth and brightness of our connections. The flame lights our way back together again from our separate lives, and it lights our way forward into a community wherein there is promise and renewal.
And now Chloe with the opening words.
Thank you so much, Barbara and Alex. Good morning. My name is Chloe Brede, and I'm the interim minister here at Pacific Unitarian Church. I'm going to start this morning by lighting a candle. This candle is a prayer for those killed in the shooting overnight in Monterey Park, for their families, and for all those who feel a renewed sense of fear in the face of such an atrocity. We as a community here at PUC lift up prayers in solidarity with the Asian American community of Los Angeles. We begin worship this morning with words from the Reverend Katie Romero Griffin. Come, let us enter into this space of hope and community. Come, let us enter into this space with our sorrows, our joys, our passion, and our compassion. Come, let us enter this space with the stories of our ancestors, for their strength and wisdom beats in our hearts. Come into this space, present to the beloved companions who move beside us. Come into this space, mindful that together we are building a future for other generations. Come into this space, whether online or here in person, and let us worship together. This morning, we will reflect on why we look at our history and spend some time creating a congregational history timeline. You may wonder why we aren't just jumping to make changes in the church. While this is definitely the impulse, the work of many interim ministries before this one tells us that remembering our history helps us truly understand how we might live into the future. The Reverend Katie Romero Griffin says this well with a reminder of how the past, present, and future are so intertwined. Again, she says, "Come, let us enter this space with the stories of our ancestors, for their strength and wisdom beats in our hearts. Come into this space, present to the beloved companions who move beside us. Come into this space, mindful that together we are building a future for other generations. Come into this space and let us worship." And we'll begin worshiping this morning with hymn number 187, "It Sounds Along the Ages." And you're invited to rise in body or spirit.
It sounds along the ages, soul answering to soul. It kindles on the pages of every Bible scroll. The psalmist heard and sang it, from martyrs' lips it broke, and prophets' songs outrang it, till sleeping nations woke. From Sinai's cliff it echoed, it breathed from Buddha's tree. It charmed in ashes darkness, it hollowed Galilee. The hammer stroke of Luther, the pilgrim's seaside prayer, the oracles of Concord, one holy word declared. It calls and Lord new justice, it speaks unknown new truth. It ever stature and unexhausted truth.
morning. I'd like to invite our school-age children down. Hi, kids. So I didn't find out about what happened last night in the news until this morning. So it kind of took a little bit of the wind out of our sails of our Happy Lunar New Year stuff that we had going on. And on that, I just want to say that we have to continue to do our education and make this world a more knowledgeable and tolerant place. And so to that end, we are celebrating Lunar New Year for the next couple weeks here at PUC. Today, Mary and her friend Coco and Mr. and Mrs. Wong are outside. They're going to be doing art, and there's lots of sweet treats out there. And the Wong's grandchildren are going to come with their school and perform next week, and we have some special activities for the kids going on all week. So I could use an assistant if somebody wants to be an assistant. Kevin. Okay. I need you to sit up here with the microphone. All right.
Hi.
Okay. Also, Happy Lunar New Year. Okay. So what is a Lunar New Year? Does anybody know? It is the beginning of a lunar calendar whose months are followed by cycles of the moon's phases. So who can find on the globe where we are? Ellie's really good at this, and so's Liv. And let Kai look. Okay, that's where we are. Where's Asia? Okay, let the little ones look. Okay. So people, that's right. Okay. So people who are Chinese, Thai, and from places like Myanmar and Vietnam and around the southern part, be still, okay, around the southern part near China, and even the Hindus who you might remember who are from the east in India, and even Hebrew people of the Jewish faith who follow Islam and in our pagan roots, all of them have a version of a lunar calendar. Okay. So there are lunar celebrations across East Asian countries, especially in China, which is why it is often referred to as Chinese New Year. But traditionally, it's celebrated in many Asian countries at the same time by people whose histories and cultures were affected by China, and sometimes in good ways and sometimes in bad ways, like through wars. So I'm gonna teach you a big word, say diaspora. Okay, so diaspora means how people move from their home country, Lily, from their home country all over the world. And as Americans, we all have a diaspora story, right? So today, people all over the world who come from these heritages, they celebrate the Lunar New Year with lots of visiting family, parades, fireworks, mythical creatures, like dragons, and traditions that are as unique and different as their own family story of diaspora. Just like how you and your family celebrate holidays, not exactly the same, and you kind of make it your own, right? So something, I've lost a little. Sorry. Okay. So because many of the modern traditions from this part of the globe, from that part, have roots in Chinese culture, something common that you might see around this time of year is the Chinese calendar, also known as the Yin calendar. So each yearly cycle is represented by one animal, and like the Western zodiac, people's signs are determined by their birth. So on this Eastern calendar, the cycle repeats every 12 years in clockwork order. What? Yeah. We're gonna talk about that. Okay. So on this Eastern calendar, the cycle repeats every 12 years in clockwork order like this: rat, ox, tiger, rabbit, dragon, snake, horse, sheep, monkey, rooster, dog, and pig. So there are endless stories about how the 12 animals of the Chinese calendar were chosen. So a popular one. I need my. Sorry, the pages are sticky. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, a popular version is that was a great race between all the animals organized by the Jade Emperor, In the ancient stories, the Jade Emperor ruled over heaven and earth. We're just gonna let. Okay. So they say the Jade Emperor wanted to figure out a way for people to keep track of time, and he told his chief advisors to select 12 interesting animals and bring them to heaven to take part in a great swimming race. The emperor's advisors sent invitations to the rat, the cat, the ox, the tiger, the rabbit, the dragon, the snake, the horse, the ram, the monkey, the chicken, and the dog. And the cat, the most handsome of all the animals, asked his friend the rat to wake him up on the day of the race so he wouldn't oversleep. The rat, however, was worried that he wouldn't be as fast or as clever as the cat. So on the day of the race, he didn't wake the cat, and the cat missed the race, and the Jade Emperor had to put the pig to take the cat's place instead. And when the cat learned of what happened, he was furious with the rat, and according to the story, that's why cats and rats are still enemies to this day.
Da, da, da.
So surprisingly, it was the tricky rat, the smallest of all the creatures, that won the Jade Emperor's race across the Great River. And when the race was just about to start, the rat had cleverly asked the ox if he could ride on his back to cross the river safely. And the ox was a strong, gentle giant who kindly said yes to the rat. And instead of letting the ox win and say thank you when they got to the other side, the rat leaped from the ox's back over his head and crossed the finish line first and won the race. So according to the legend, this is why the first year of the Chinese calendar is the year of the rat, and the second year is the year of the ox. And one by one, the remaining animals crossed the river to receive their prizes from the Jade Emperor, which was an eternal place on the calendar in the order they each crossed the finish line. So tonight, over 1.5 billion people will start celebrating the first new moon in the year of the rabbit. And in the end, we don't have to feel too poorly for the cat. The Vietnamese people gave the cat an important place of honor on their calendar. And for those celebrating Lunar New Year, known as Tet, this is the year of the cat. So whether you follow the cat, the rabbit, or the stars, best of luck to all of you under the new moons. That's what I was looking for.
Go now in peace. Go now in
And we center down into the spirit of worship this morning with our hymn, Voice Still and Small. So you may remain seated and join us in singing Voice Still and Small.
peace.
it's time for our joys and sorrows. You're invited to come up and light a candle for a brief personal announcement.
candle this morning for all the joys and sorrows that remain unspoken but in our hearts. And if you would join me in the spirit of prayer, you can either perhaps lower your gaze or close your eyes. Spirit of life, we see you in the rain that blessed and hurt our land these last couple of weeks. We hear you in the wind that blew through our city, cool and refreshing, and even sometimes a bit scary. Spirit of life, we feel you in the sunlight that blanketed our land today and yesterday, warming us even as we experience cold nights. Spirit of life, we come together knowing that life flows through us and around us endlessly. We feel that connection, especially as we join together in worship. Spirit of life, especially as we come together, connected as we are, despite the life that flows through us, we carry hard truths. Sicknesses like cancer and depression, grief for those lost, horror at the events over the last day, guilt as we navigate hard personal relationships and the ways we have messed up this week. Spirit of life, we come together. As we come together, we are reminded that we are not alone. The life energy, the love that flows between us does not stop, despite our struggles. We are a part of something larger, a larger love, even when we are struggling. Spirit of life, as you flow between us, help us remember and feel loved. Feel that which is never ending, the life force, the matter that cannot be destroyed, the thing that some might call love, that is never ending. Spirit of life, help us see beauty, joy, relief all around us, in the wind, in the rain, in the sunshine. Life keeps on. Love keeps on. Connection keeps on, wherever we might choose to see it. We'll take a moment of silence. Amen. The violin is a gift this morning, isn't it? Our reading this morning is Remembering by William Stafford. When there was air, when you could breathe any day if you liked, and if you wanted to, you could run. I used to climb those hills back of town and follow a gully so my eyes were at ground level and could look out through grass as the stems bent in their tensile ways and see snow mountains follow along the way distance goes. Now I carry those days in a tiny box wherever I go, and I open the lid like this and let the light glimpse and then glance away. There is a sigh like my breath when I do this. Some days I do this again and again. Why history? Or perhaps in longer form, why do we study history? Why do we study world history, our nations, our communities, our denominations, our churches, or even our own family or personal history? The first step in the interim process is studying and reflecting on our history. We, the entire church, me, the transition team, the board, large and small groups such as us gathered today, get the opportunity to explore our history. So why history? Why is this the first step? By turning to the 5 C's of historical thinking, we can get some answers to this question. The 5 C's were created by scholars Thomas Andrews and Flannery Burke. The first C is change over time. How has a place or an idea changed over time? Understanding changes can offer us insight into how a future change might happen, or even the pace of a change in an organization. The second is context. History and stories within it are often richer and clearer if we understand the context. For example, if a church had a thriving women's auxiliary group at one point, as a lot of our churches did, perhaps it's important to know that at that time, only 20% of women worked outside the home. Or to understand that a well-paying textile plant in town enabled families to live on a single income, allowing women of the era to stay home and volunteer at church, perhaps with the auxiliary. Context matters. The third is causality, understanding what caused what. For example, if we know that 2 churches merged or split, it's interesting to know what caused those events. In the case of the separation, were things irreconcilable theological differences? Perhaps in the case of our Unitarian and Congregationalists, the split that led to the formation of our denomination. Or were there personal differences? I've seen examples of smaller groups breaking off from bigger churches because they want to maintain the church's small, lay-led fellowship feel. It can be hard to fully understand the cause of an event, but it's important to try. The cause can give us insight. The fourth is contingency, an understanding that for something to happen, many factors have to be at play. The world is connected, interconnected. Things do not occur in isolation. As Unitarian Universalists, this is written into our principles. The 7th principle talks about respecting the interdependent web of all existence for which we are part, and is typically interpreted as our environmental principle. I like to understand it, though, in a broader way, through a broader lens. Nothing in this world happens in isolation. The fifth is complexity, acknowledging that history is not just a list of names and dates, but questions that are much more complex than that. As I've spent time with you all, I've slowly been learning the history from different people. And it's been interesting that, for example, in the case of a minister from 10 years ago, there's different ways in which people remember that time. Different stories, different emotions. In other cases, folks still remember a conflict from one perspective or another. Some even still have strong feelings about that issue, even 10 years later. These issues are still complex years and years later. I like the 5 C's to some extent because I'm a person who appreciates mnemonics, and also because it points to my reason for studying history, looking for patterns, looking at change over time and causality, and even interconnectedness and complexity in what's going on. In doing this, we can find patterns. Patterns in what we believe, patterns in how we act and react, patterns that illuminate what we value and how we live those values. Looking at patterns, it's helpful on both a congregational level and honestly also on a personal level too. Those who are familiar with psychology probably understand this well. If you can identify a pattern in behavior in an individual or family, you can then work to change that pattern that creates problems or suffering, and then enhance those patterns that are positive or create health. In my chaplaincy residency, I was a chaplain at Massachusetts General Hospital for a year, and we spent a lot of time thinking about our own patterns. We looked at it in terms of what we found easy and what we found hard, who we found easy to care for, and who we found hard to care for. For one of my colleagues, he really connected to patients with a deep faith, a deep understanding of God, a deep connection to God, much like his own connection. And this was usually very positive, but it could get in the way when he was faced with a person who was an atheist or an agnostic. For me, I had to grow into my comfort with older women with severe psychological diagnoses. I grew up with a grandmother, with debilitating bipolar disorder. As a result, I had to work hard to differentiate my patients in the hospital from my childhood experiences with my grandmother. Recognizing the pattern and then working on it made me a much better chaplain and minister to everyone I served. We may also see patterns in our own family systems. Patterns may be recognized when we think about how we handle conflict, for example. Are we someone who stays and fights, or are we someone who flees either emotionally or physically? Or do we freeze, unable to respond? Perhaps we even try to appease or compromise. We may be the consummate peacemaker, much like our mother or father. Knowing our conflict style or pattern, we can understand how that style helps or hurts us. If we constantly work towards a compromise or appeasement, are we neglecting our own needs? If we're the fighter, maybe we need to work on empathy and understanding the other person's point of view. Other family patterns may be about how we show affection or don't show affection. For example, I come from a very Germanic family. We aren't known for being outwardly affectionate or expressive. Verbal intimacy can be a challenge for those of us from this background. And I didn't grow up in a family who said, I love you or I miss you often. However, I've learned over the years that expressing those ideas, that's vital to my loved ones and it's vital to me. I'm sure each of you can name how your family's heritage has affected you and the positives and negatives that come with those cultural expressions. And these patterns, they also happen in churches. And sometimes these patterns are apparent, and sometimes it takes time and effort to discover them. A colleague of mine is a well-known interim minister, and he served for a stint in Rochester, New York. Rochester has a couple big UU churches with rich histories. During his interim period, the church discovered some fascinating things about its community. One of these discoveries was around conflict. The church had a habit or a pattern of getting into conflict during ministerial transitions. A minister would leave for whatever reason, and then a conflict would crop up and happen. Sometimes because of the nature of the transition, and sometimes just because of the anxiety created by the transition. Noticing this allowed the congregation to look at that pattern of how they placed blame and how they engaged in transitions in the future, perhaps being more intentional during transitions from one minister to another. They also discovered something in Rochester about their own identity. In looking at their history, the congregation noticed a long and powerful social justice history. They had been extremely active in civil rights. This legacy as civil rights leaders and supporters informed their identity going forward. They were proud of that legacy and they wanted to continue it. I can almost imagine that social justice legacy is like that little box that was described in our reading. Every time they opened it, they were inspired. As the church in Rochester considered their future, they reaffirmed their commitment to social justice and in particular to racial justice work that continues today at that church with Black Lives Matters vigils and police accountability work. They even started one of the 2 hotlines in the country that creates a safe space for people to talk about abortion experiences by offering unbiased support and encouragement and self-care for these people who call. Why history? To really know who we are, to really know who we will be now and in the future, we have to look at where we came from. We have to understand the patterns, habits, and values we inherited from the past. We look at it in all of its complexity and interconnectedness. Like detectives, we look for the patterns. We wonder what of those patterns we should keep and what we should leave behind. Some of this work will be hard. We'll hear stories about conflict or even misconduct. Those stories will guide us into a vision of how to be better, how to do better in the future. We will hear inspiring stories of advocacy and community care, which will inspire us to continue those threads, carrying on the positive parts of our legacy and using it to inspire our future. What will we carry in our box? I love how our reading today describes the air and the mountains. I can almost smell the mountain air he described keeping in his box. It reminds me of an analogy a friend of mine uses of how to deal with critique. and I think it applies here. She describes criticism as cards coming towards you, and you pick a card out of the air. Once you read it, you decide if you want to keep it or perhaps put it back. If you want to keep it and put it in your box, or perhaps just let it drift away. What do we want to look at and consider and learn from and then let drift away? Memories that are informative but don't need repeating. What do we want to fill our box with? Memories that paint a beautiful picture of the future. A future where we can open our box, remember what we were, the positive things we did, and recreate that, add to it going forward. I hope you'll join us in this process. I hope it's inspiring, emotional, and illuminating. I hope you will share with me and others your thoughts and your learnings. We're doing this process together, you and me, us. Let us continue exploring our history as a congregation. And we're going to do this. We're going to do a little timeline exercise here, which I hope everyone will contribute to. And Melissa Garcia is going to kick us off by describing it.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Melissa Garcia, and I'm part of the ministerial transition team. So during our last transition between ministers, to me, it felt like, okay, let's just hold on. Let's hold on to what we can until our new minister comes. That's what it felt like to me. I don't know who had a similar kind of a experience, but being part of this committee, I'm really starting to understand the purpose of this transition time, this transition minister, and this long time, this 2 years, for us as a community to be able to reflect on the past as well as looking forward to our future. So today we are taking this opportunity to take a deep dive into our history, as Minister Chloe was talking about. And our history here is unique. It's always personal, and that's what's special about UU. And we are in an interesting place in our history where we are no longer have any of our legacy members. We don't have any among us who are founding members. But we all have our own history here as a community. Each of us has a part of it and owns a part of it, which is why I'm up here rambling today. We are creating our historical timeline. Gary has already put a few key moments up here that kind of anchor us and gives us a starting point of where we can look at our history. But we need everyone's help to make this more complete. So we're asking all of you to participate in this activity of revisiting where we came from and how we came to be here, and it's going to form where we're going to go. Let's see. We're going to be starting, some of these things are going to be institutional memories, things like, which I haven't seen up there, like the first time we did the black and white event, or when the monks came here and did that beautiful sand mandala. I have no idea about dates, so if anybody knows about dates, these are the things we can put up here. But also even some of our more controversial moments, so it doesn't have to be all the good and pretty stuff. But also our personal memories, marriages, deaths, when families left, when families came, when you came. So we want to have all of the good, all of the joyous, all of the wonderful things that we've accomplished as a community, but also the sad and the conflictual, and get down to the down and dirty as well. It's all a part of us. So if and when you feel moved, we ask you to share. I'm going to be passing around a mic. Can we do that? Perfect. And we have a couple members. We'll be passing around the microphone, so if you want to raise your hand, if there's anything that you want to share that we can put up on the mic. We have some scribes who will be putting onto the timeline for you. So we ask you to kind of keep it to maybe 1 or 2 sentences, just as these are key moments. If you prefer to write on the timeline yourself, in the back corner, we have Post-its and pens for you to write after service if you want to write down your own thing and put them up. And like I said, everything that you can remember that was important to you or that you think is important to our church. So you can use the Post-its. It's going to get messy, and that's okay. Dates might get a little confused. We might have different dates on different things, and that's all fine. And that's what we're doing here, is trying to figure all that out. At the end, when we're done with this, we're going to leave this up. So after service, during lunchtime, and through the week, we're going to try and leave this up at least for a week, at least through next Sunday, possibly longer if we're able to, depending on the schedule of what's going on here in the sanctuary. But what we're going to try and do is put this timeline together in some sort of sensible way, and we will try to release it to the congregation so that all of you can look at this. But we're also going to be using it for our ministerial search, and also help us understand who we are, where we came from, and where we want to go. So let's take a moment, just take a few seconds, to sit and think about where we are, how you came here, why this church is important to you, the experiences you've had, the positive, the not so positive, our relationships. And when you feel moved, raise your hand and share, and we'll have someone write. And again, at the end of service, you can take a Post-it and put up your own memories.
I was just looking today at Severin Beeman's resume that he sent to us on October 2008 and then I believe we hired you, in early 2009? Anyway, he's been such a wonderful addition for all these years.
I'm pretty sure it was January of 2017 when a whole lot of us UUs went to the big crush of the Women's March downtown LA. When there were hundreds of thousands there, and we were crushed into downtown LA like sardines. You kind of wondered if you might get squished and killed, but it all turned out wonderful, and it was a wonderful day. So that's my one, and my other short one is that on Earth Day of 2012, I signed the book here.
I have to mention that in 2012, we had the weekend build that established our permaculture garden.
This is about a group experience and also a deeply personal experience. In 2018, in January, we were working, a whole bunch of us, on producing the Vagina Monologues, which we did here at the church, I believe on Valentine's Day. I came in for my individual rehearsal around the 7th of January with our lovely Miss Masters, who was directing, and mentioned to her that my husband was dying in the hospital, and she said, "You don't need to be here." And I said, "Oh, yes, I do." I felt like that group of women that I was in the Vagina Monologues with sustained me, loved me, and supported me, and helped me get through that.
I think it was 2018 or so, we installed those solar panels.
So Barbara Love suggested to me to start a women's book group, and that would have been about 2008 or 2009, and it's been going since. I left it briefly for work. But another thing that I don't know the date of was when Renee Daly left the RE, and she had been working here for 20 years and was really foundational in my understanding of RE curriculum.
So I have a couple of personal pivotal moments for myself, which can be summarized as opportunities for creating connection and community. In 2014, shortly after I started coming to PUC, I started volunteering in the kitchen to prepare the brunch, and I almost immediately felt a sense of belonging. So that opened up all kinds of things for me, and it was really a great experience. The other thing was when Reverend Steve was here, he had the ability to create connections and community, and he participated in almost everything. So I always valued that, and I hope that that is something that we can continue with future ministers, because it made a big difference for me to have him there. And the last that I'll share with you is in 2020 and beyond, during the COVID time, I developed a closer connection to the choir members as we were struggling through the Zoom rehearsals and Zoom recordings, which were so difficult and so humbling. But it, you know, we persevered, and it was something that we struggled through. And I think that, and also the fact that Severin had led us to socialize a little bit before we practiced, and we got to know each other. At least I got to know them better, and have developed some deep friendships.
Hi, two important dates that I know about for our church. One of those is 1962. In 1962, we were one of the few churches who came together, and we wound up buying Camp de Benneville Pines. It is our church. We are a partial owner of that church up there. We were one of the founding, the camp up there, thank you. So that's a big date for our congregation as well. The other one was 2012. That's when we started the food ministry program. Back then it was a infancy program. Francis and I were cooking leftovers from the wedding the day before, but that's how we started. So we've been 10 years now going strong with the program, so two important dates.
Okay, just while we're sitting next to each other. A few other things we started, Laundry Love, that's a bit on hiatus right now, but we started that in February of 2019. And our daughter helped do the Path of Enlightenment for her Girl Scout project in October of 2016, which now Amy's son's gonna help take over and upgrade. And then Andy and I, when Renee left, as you were saying, we started taking over the Camp de Benneville activities and sharing that. So that's been very sorry to see Renee leave because she's magic, but it's been a joy for us to be able to take that over, so.
Okay, what I want to share is I was a member here twice. The first time was from 1997 to sometime around 2002. And then my dad and I came back in August of 2012 after my mother died. We were seeking stability, and the church did help us with that. And what I want to talk about is how the church changed between those two time periods. During my first membership, the congregation seemed to be predominantly atheist and humanist, to the point where you could not say the G word, as in the deity. And when I came back in 2012, I was surprised. Well, I was rather surprised that people were talking about prayer and openly talking about God. So that was a change, probably a change for the better, because during the period of atheism was kind of interesting. I remember Reverend Jane had one service. She had an unbaptism. She was originally a Methodist, and she got she unbaptized herself, and I'm sorry I don't have a time point for that. And the other rather strange thing, I remember going to a meeting where the topic was the Metropolitan Community Church, which is a gay church, wanted to use our hall for Sunday afternoon services. And most of the people there were just vigorously opposed to it. Not because they're gay. Gay is perfectly fine. They were afraid that, among other things, they're afraid that they would poach our gay people. But they wanted since the Metropolitan Community Church were openly Christian, they had a cross. And they wanted to put, and that offended people, and they wanted to put a cross in the closet when it wasn't being used. And even that was offensive, but I found surrealistic as a church where gay people are just fine, but the cross has to go in the closet.
I didn't know about all of that. That's great. When my husband and I, my late husband and I first came to here, he wanted to speak French. So he and Dan Monnier started the French group, which now is still going, and that was in the early 2000. And I joined the Women's Federation, which I don't know when it started, but I came about 2000, so it was at least in the 1990s.
I'd like to mention that Gary Hart is the only person to have served this church as board president 2 different times for 2 years each.
Can I take my turn? Judy. I don't need that, thank you. I am not sure exactly of the date when it started, but I joined a dream group here in the late 1990s, and it was just amazing. So I think it might have started 10 years prior to that, so early 1990s. Thanks.
2008 was the Great Recession, which was really hard on the church budget. Around 2009, I think roughly, our membership director left, not because of that, but we didn't replace her. That was Janice Shiazawa, and we didn't replace her, and I'm sure that had something to do with it. I think Renee left right around 2000, plus or minus 2 years, but around 2000. I'm sorry, 2010, I meant. Oh, sorry, the West Wall, was it 2009? 2009, we got a new West Wall.
In the early 80s, I recall a group, some of your members went to Russia. And that was a good thing, I believe, but in the end, somebody's nodding their head. I know who. Previously, I had been at a church, Unitarian church in New York, Rockland County, New York. And we had hosted the Russians. And one of the questions was, oh, dioxane, oh, that's Dow Chemical. Yeah.
When was the Mandela? We should put that up. 2012. 2012?
Mine's a general date, but around 1965, when I was involved in RE, and we had about 100 kids, and we were up at the elementary school over there. And I would lead the breakaway on Sundays halfway through the thing, and about 5 or 6 of us would climb over the fence and sit in the trees. And I remember playing on this slab before the building was built, and I planted some of the trees out there. So But that's enough story.
He also was the janitor of the church in his teens. I was the church secretary for a number of years, and we joined in 1960. He was 3, his sister was 5. I won't tell you how old I was.
And I remember they wouldn't let me bring my cowboy gun to church school.
Okay. I don't know the date of this, but I know that we sent a group to New Orleans. Does anyone remember when this was after Hurricane Katrina, and we had a sort of a partnership with a UU church there? Can someone help? I mean, I know it was. Well, I think I joined this church in 2006, so I think it was sometime after. Right, but it was after that, so maybe 2006-ish.
Okay, I think our time is getting short, so if you have more things to add, and I'm sure you will, and you'll be thinking of these during lunch, you'll be thinking of these during the week. We'll have this up next Sunday. We have notepads over here and pens. Please add to it. We just are getting such rich things here. I'm loving it. So we're going to cut it off for right now, but please continue to add to our timeline.
Now's the time for our offertory, where you can support our community with something other than your time and talent. And remember, put your money where your heart is.
Ready? Yeah.
So in the interest of time this morning, because I want to get you out to eat as soon as possible, we're not going to sing our closing hymn, but we will do our closing words. So Barbara, will you kick us off here?
Sure. This church is dedicated to the proposition that behind all our differences, beneath all our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together. In spite of time and death and the space between the stars, we pause in silent witness to that unity. May the blessings of love be upon you. May love's peace abide within you. May love's presence illumine your hearts now and forevermore. So be it. Amen. Shalom. Salam. Namaste. And blessed be. And so it is. And now our service truly begins.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's cool.
Thank you.
10 long years since I left my home in the holler where I was born. When the cool fall nights make the wood smoke rise, the fox hunter blows in his horn. I fell in love with a girl from the town. I thought that she would be true. I ran away to Charlottesville and worked in a sawmill or two. What have they done to the old home place? Why did they tear it down? And why did I leave my plow in the field and look for a job in the town? Come on, play it, Sonny. Well, that girl went off with somebody else. The tariffs they took on my pay. And here I stand where the old home once stood before they took it away. Now east fly south and the cold winds blow. I stood here and hung my head. I lost my love and I lost my home, and now I wish I were dead. What have they done to that old home place? Why did they tear it down? And why did I leave that plow in the field and look for a job in the town? And why did I leave my plow in the field and look for a job in the town?
All right. Very good. Well done. Yeah, that was beautiful. Can you just wait till we get up and then play?
We're
A
gonna wait
reminder to put your stuff up on the timeline, and let's go eat, and an announcement from our musicians.
All right.
I was just going to say, we're going to wait till you get up, and then we'll keep